So I'd like to welcome in retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, Senior Fellow at Defense Priorities and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Lieutenant Colonel, great to see you. This is concerning a lot of people. So Russian aircraft operating in the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone, plus the second Russian incursion into Denmark in 2 days that Russia denies, but combine that with the multiple incursions by Russia into NATO countries recently. What is happening here? Is this intentional?
You know, I think we have to keep things into context. And first of all, let's look at the Alaska issue, because NORAD itself released a statement this morning that said this is quite normal. They said this is not unusual. It's not out of the ordinary. They never entered American or Canadian airspace. So it's just Russia moving around. And look, this used to happen routinely from our side and from their side during the Cold War. So there's lots of precedents for this. I think that because there's lots of things in the news right now people are paying attention to everything and thinking that there's some sort of big plan here going on. And you even look at the situation in the Danish airspace. There, not only is Russia saying it's not ours, but they're also, even the Danish officials are uncertain as to the origin of this thing. They have not positively identified it as Russian, and yet you see so many people immediately want to say, well, it's definitely Russia, because Russia's the bad guy, et cetera. So we have to be careful about making ramifications that this means something here when it may not even be a Russian, or even if it is, it's potentially a reconnaissance drone. Certainly hasn't attacked anything. So I think that right now there's not a lot going on that's really different. Until something happens where like there's an attack or something, then obviously you have a completely different ballgame. But so far we haven't seen anything like that. And even in the Polish one, which kind of started this whole round of things with allegedly 19 drones that entered their airspace, we have only seen a handful of actual evidence that there was that many. Like I think 3 or 4 is all they've actually been shown, and none of them were armed drones. So there's a lot of evidence that they could literally have been distracted by Ukrainian electronic warfare and distracted from their other targets. So I don't think that there's a big issue here yet, and something we'll need to keep watching, though.
All right, so maybe take a beat. Lots of people, though, Lieutenant Colonel, we know are on alert, including world leaders. I'd like to listen again to what President Trump said Monday. This was at the UN General Assembly about any Russian aircraft that violate NATO airspace.
Do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do.
All right, so Lieutenant Colonel, what does it tell you that this appears to still be happening? Again, as you said, it may not be, but it appears to, particularly after President Trump made that statement Monday.
Yeah, you know, we need to be real careful on some of the language you use, especially on the things that follow here, because shooting down an aircraft of a hostile country is an act of war, and that could spark into all kinds of additional things here. And you don't want to get to the point to where you're so want to be tough and all this, that you take actual action, as opposed to what always happened during the Cold War many times. What happened even in this case here from NORAD. You scramble fighter jets, you move up in there, you quotes shoo them away, et cetera. Russia did the same, because we do the same thing to Russia sometimes. NATO aircraft is often flying right near the borders of the Russian airspace. We do the same thing in China. We get right up to their edge. We go into what's considered by some Chinese ADIZ. We need to make sure we don't take something that's kind of common and then turn it into something more by shooting down, because now then once you shoot down an aircraft, especially if you kill the pilot, you've got a potential major crisis on your hands, and that doesn't serve anybody's interests.
Absolutely. So, Lieutenant Colonel, I mean, what do you make of Ukraine President Zelensky's new warning to Russia that it either ends the war or people find bomb shelters? Are we seeing a shift in momentum here?
We're not seeing a shift in momentum. We're seeing a shift in rhetoric, though, that's for sure. And that, I think a lot of that was spawned by President Trump's Tuesday Truth Social, where he said Ukraine could now go, and the conditions now are they can win and they can drive Russia all the way back to the 1991 borders, maybe even into Russia. I think that gave a lot of oxygen to those in Europe, and definitely in Ukraine, to where they've been wanting to hear that from Trump for a long time. But even that has to be, you got to look in the fine print, because because Trump didn't offer anything new. He didn't say, I'm going to put sanctions on, secondary sanctions on China, India, Brazil, any new sanctions on Russia, no new packages of aid that are besides what was already in the pipeline to give to the Ukraine side. So we need to cool the jets a little bit on that one too. But the rhetoric is definitely very much higher, and it's got picked up on by Zelensky. But Zelensky doesn't have the capacity to make good on that threat. I mean, they're already doing long-range drones and some missiles into Russia as it is, and they are having some success. So there's nothing new with that. I think it's just kind of a ramp up of the rhetoric.
All right. So just really a few hours ago, it was just this morning, Lieutenant Colonel, we've learned Secretary of War Hegseth has now ordered all officers of brigadier general or above to meet at Quantico September 30th. That is Tuesday. Do you think that has anything to do with what's happening or potentially happening right now concerning Russia?
Well, I'll tell you that is the one thing that does have me somewhat concerned. To my knowledge, this is unprecedented. I've never seen the Secretary of Defense, or now the Secretary of War, actually call in all of the command staff and the general officers from all the commands across the world all together in one place at one time. We routinely do this where there's secure video teleconference, as they call them, civets. You talk all the time at the highest levels in the most classified environments. There's no problem with that. But to have them all come in personally at one time, that implies that there's more than just conveying information. And very oftentimes when something's really important, and I can attest to this from my own military experience, especially prepper and to go into combat. Sometimes that commander, they want to look at their subordinates in the eye. They want to see them. They want to hear them, and they want to talk back and forth with them on something that's really important. And one would think that this is something that's like that. And I don't think it's any coincidence that this is coming. This announcement is coming about 3 days after the Pentagon has placed restrictions on the press corps and said that you can't say anything that, basically is not approved by the Pentagon, or you'll lose your credentials. No leaks or whatever. So it seems like something big is coming up, and they don't want anybody to know about it. And so far, and according to the Washington Post, I looked at just shortly before we came on the air here, even the people they've talked to, none of them have any idea what this is about. So it definitely has a lot of attention here, and I think that we need to be paying a lot of attention to what may come from this.
Absolutely. We are certainly following it all. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you as always.